I have never been more frustrated by a video game than I was by Danganronpa Ultra Despair Girls. And I've played split-screen LEGO Star Wars. Conceptually, it's cool, sure, but that means squat when the devs take their concepts and... A story centered on two high school girls in an apocalyptic city is unique, at least in the gaming space that I'm aware of, and the conceit of mistreated children fighting for a paradise built on murder, torture, and demented fun is the most absolutely mind-fuckingly awesome chocolate vanilla swirl of hope and despair that is perfect for Danganronpa. Unfortunately, nuanced moral dilemma is less a theme of the game and more of a dream in the twinkle of some Martian philosopher's eye. The only kids we know anything about either don't get any characterization until 20 seconds before their death, have such brain-dead lazy motivations that their actions are more pathetic than sympathetic, are written so logically that you'd need the Hubble Space Telescope to work out the intended trajectory of their character arc, or are so unapologetically evil that the brief, and I mean it's barely even insinuated, plea for emotion that the game offers you is ash in Pompeii. On the flip side, it's revealed that every single member of the army of nameless children was being mind-controlled, which actually makes them too sympathetic for the nuanced moral conversation the game tricks itself into believing it has to exist. Had any thought been put into developing the kids' motivations for any length of screen time or any further than not at all, the adult's eventual moral reduction would have been hopelessly dark yet understandable, you know, instead of maddeningly stupid, like Mr. Haiji Toa, who, despite wanting nothing more than Monica and the rest of the children's deaths, spends an hour within 6 feet of her incredibly crushable throat having a screaming match with a 17-year-old. God, I hate that I wanted him to kill her. I don't want anybody to die, ever, especially not children, but it's so infuriating to watch him stand there lecturing the main character on following through when the one move that would solve all of his problems is readily actionable and would be as easy as snapping pencil lead. The entire conclusion of this game is an unending web of messy logic and easy choices that somebody up high clearly thought was the greatest moral quandary since Hiroshima. The one singular, kinda well-written, actually somewhat conflicting character has a mental breakdown and acts completely against his own interests and dies, which in context makes sense. It actually makes sense. And if all of the rest of the Warriors of Hope, who are the actually important non-brainwashed kids, had died as well, I wouldn't even care. But they didn't. The fighter lives. She shows up again at the very end with some information that, guess what, makes the final decision even easier. I'm putting too much emphasis on the ending. The previous 15 hours of fuck what are just as mind-numbing. Haiji Toa, the leader of the resistance, wants nothing to do with the only people on the planet who could possibly do anything to help him because he's afraid that they'll ruin his family's reputation. Oh yeah, I know how to make siding with the adults less of a cut-and-dry decision. Let's make their leader even more of a trash monster than Oscar the Grouch. Toko Fukawa, the game's deuteragonist, spends the first few chapters helping the main character try to escape the city, and their attempts are only ever thwarted by sheer circumstance, but it's revealed that them escaping was actually the last thing she could ever have wanted to happen. Multiple characters, that means more than one, get introduced and die almost immediately for no purpose other than to be walking references to the first game and maybe open a door or demonstrate something incredibly simple that could have just been inferred by the player. By far, the best aspect of the plot is the main character, Kamaru's developing friendship with Toko, and despite actually being written somewhat competently, it still manages to be unyieldingly frustrating. Oh no, I'm Kamaru and I have a gun specifically designed to be used against the enemies in the game, but I can't possibly survive. Shut up, completely normal, barely an individual. They really like to drive home how relatable Kamaru is because subtlety be damned. I'm Toko and you need to move. God, I'm Toko and I'm human garbage, but also you're stupid and I hate you, Kamaru. That was mean, but you're helping me and I'm sure we can be friends eventually, so it's okay. Oh no, I'm Kamaru, and despite having taken down dozens of Monokumas with ease and having seen children dancing in their parents' open rib cages making ring pops with their eyeballs, I'm completely debilitated after watching someone I just met and knew about as well as the corpses in the Great Wall of China die. How can I go on? Yeah, we get it. I, Toko, understand that it's symbolic of the death of hope, but ignoring how you could have learned this lesson 100 ways that didn't involve dousing the ocean with dark red potential, the fact that it didn't occur to a single one of us that those fancy little bomb bracelets might have the slightest issue with you trying to leave the island, or that you learning this lesson now further damages your already insane reaction to the fate of your parents at the climax of the story, what's really important is that you're stupid. You're right, I have to be strong. Hey, it's me, Toko, again, revealing more of my character traits and explaining details of my powers, all of which will be forgotten pretty much instantly. Also, I'm trash, but Kamaru is stupid for believing in me. Toko, that's mean. Anyways, oh god, this is Kamaru, by the way. How will I go on? Okay, you get it. In Chapter 3, Kamaru falsely, but fairly, comes to believe that Toko isn't gonna come around and be her friend. But then, Toko comes around and is her friend, and then immediately starts being cagey again. Then, in Chapter 4, despite being newly renewed with courage and the power of friendship, Kamaru decides that she's gonna leave the city and abandon the revolutionary forces that she just accidentally helped cull a massive part of, and just as she's about to leave, it's revealed that Toko was never Kamaru's friend. But she's all like, yeah, you were, and Toko's all like, yeah, I was. And then they go back into the city, but Kamaru's still unsure of herself, but then she gives a really awkward speech, and now she's brave? Because giving a speech is the most harrowing thing she's had to endure all game, I guess. It's the definition of treading water. Every time it seems like either of them is gonna make some kind of progress, they just don't. You know what the worst thing about Kamaru is? She's actually an entertaining character, but they somehow manage to avoid putting pretty much any of that into the novel's worth of dialogue you'll find in the main story. No, if you want Kamaru to show any kind of passion and generally exude any character traits other than average and pathetic, you better fucking anamorph your ass into an extra content sniffing dog, because in true Danganronpa fashion, that's the only place you're gonna find any interesting background info about anything. Alright, let's shift gears real quick from talking about how bad a specific part of the story is to talking about how bad another specific part of the story is. One of the less tangible aspects of a narrative is the writer's voice. Obviously, the tone and direction of any given story are, by some unavoidable quality, going to be influenced by the opinions of its creator. Whether or not the voice being audible is a good thing or a bad thing generally varies from story to story. Like how The Great Gatsby would be nothing more than a shelf filler if it weren't for F. Scott Fitzgerald's personal critiques of 1920s culture serving as its very foundation. Or how Dan Slott's obvious distaste for the character of Peter Parker turns every issue of Spider-Man he's ever touched into a personal attack against the readers. However, a good rule of thumb is that unless your voice directly contradicts the themes of the story, causes characters to act unreasonably unlike themselves, or just generally fouls the final product, it's probably fine. Now, you're a smart cookie, so you've probably correctly guessed that I'm under the impression that the writer of Ultra Despair Girls in some way allowed his personal voice to sully the game's writing. And you'd be correct. While this game has many flaws, by far the most infuriating is the fact that after Chapter 3, it develops serious obsessions with potty humor and, well, there's really no way to put it lightly, pedophilia. Now, I don't want to assume anything about the writer, because it could simply be a difference of culture or taste in humor, but what I am confident in saying is that I have never experienced another piece of media as not a horror movie about pedophilia as this is, with quite so many child panty shots. Or, dear God, Haiji Toa, yeah, he's back, just randomly admitting to straight up being a pedophile, and then later proudly clarifying just how much of a pedophile he is, and then Kamaru, so help me God, finding it attractive. I'm on the verge of tears here because it's so sudden and makes so little sense that it almost feels malicious. Jesus Christ, not to mention, I don't even want to show the CG because it's maybe one of the worst things I've ever seen, but you know what? Okay, one frame. There, if you care, pause, but I don't want that in my video for any longer than it has to be. Oh good God, I think that's everything. Psych, guess what? The gameplay is also bad, but it's okay. I'll be brief. Psych, gotcha again. Let's start with the meaty bit. This game is a visual novel and a third-person shooter. It's an unconventional combo to be sure, but luckily it's not a problem. It would be if the TPS part was fun enough that the VN part became a slog, but that never even comes close to becoming an issue. To start, you don't have a reticle. You have a laser, and your shots travel down its path. Ignoring the fact that it almost never ends in the center of your screen, at close ranges it may as well not even be there, as you pretty much just have to rely on intuition to hit your shots. It certainly doesn't help that the hitbox for this game's equivalent of a headshot doesn't even lie in the center of the enemies. Oh, you know what that bell means? It means we've discussed every difficult aspect of the gameplay. Yup, one fucking thing. Ammo's not a problem. Whenever you run out, the game gives you more. Same goes for health. God forbid the player ever have to try. Every enemy is virtually identical, and if you're ever overwhelmed by the quantity of them, don't worry. That's what Paralyze is for. By far the most difficult sections are the 2 times it makes you defend resistance members in their base during a Monokuma attack. Just using Kamaru, it's very difficult to keep everyone alive, but, and I'm pretty sure this is intentional, it doesn't punish you for letting people die either, so it's kind of a moot point. And maybe you caught it, but I just alluded to the fact that there is a second playable character, Genocide Jill, and the only footage I have playing as her is the parts where it forces you to, because I refuse to make this game even easier than it already was. It's kind of hilarious, because Toko constantly telling Kamaru how useless she is, and Kamaru talking about how much she had to rely on Toko would make sense if the game was ever difficult enough to warrant switching. I even restarted the game halfway through on the hardest difficulty because surely that would improve the experience. Nope, it's functionally identical. Supposedly it reduces your chance to use Genocide Jill mode, but I truly have no idea what that means. From what I was actually able to notice in game, all it does is reduce the amount of ammo and money you find, moot point because it still showers you in ammo, and there's 0 point in buying upgrades for Jill or anything for your gun past ammo capacity and damage for the break bullet. Why only the break bullet? Because with almost no exception, the other bullets are only useful for a couple enemies that basically require you to use them, lame, or puzzles. Really, truly easy puzzles. I'm talking, oh, you took 8.3 picoseconds to figure it out? Well, why don't I just give you the answer easy? What they should have done is give the break bullet infinite ammo, diversify enemy health so that there's actually some necessity to use other options in combat, rework said other options so that there's no overlap, busted bullets, or bullets that are completely useless outside of puzzles, and make the game less puzzle focused in general. There's so goddamn many of them. Is it a third-person shooter or first grade English assignment? If the soothing audio you have running in the background to quell your seething rage ever somehow distracts you enough that you die? No, you didn't. A quick QTE, because of course, and you're good to go. They even throw in an enemy stun for your trouble. I guess I should note that you do technically require Genocide Chill power for it to proc, but again, you probably didn't have to use her at all, and this clip is from the second to last combat encounter in the entire game, because with the exception of an incident involving daylight robbery, I didn't die once until then. It was really confusing every time I found an ability that improved despair time, because I needed to actually die to get the tutorial on what it was. Oh yeah, did I mention that there's abilities in this game, and that most of them are trash, and that despite having a leveling system, you have to just find them lying on the ground? It's so awful. I didn't even talk about the tutorials. Oh my god, there's so many tutorials. 24 at least. I try to avoid going over every single detail of the games I talk about, because regardless of whether or not I think a game is good, I want people who watch my videos and decide to play the game themselves to be able to experience at least some of it free of my dogma. And you know what? I still managed it here. But so much of this sock with a hole in the heel of a game hurtles so directly toward the Best Buy bargain bin that it's almost unbelievable they did it on accident. 87%. What the fuck?